So. Okay, there we go. And okay, so we're on exercise number 14. We'll start off with you, Joe. We'll have you read that in Greek and then take it from there.
All right. Number 14. Autos anabine pros ta hieron hati ekai amartian en te cardia autu. So in a rough translation, he himself, he or goes up to the temple, that or because he has sin in the heart his. So he himself goes up to the temple because he has sin in his heart.
Okay.
Is ta hiron nominative singular neuter, accusative singular neuter, or accusative singular masculine? And I chose accusative singular neuter. And how can I be sure? How can I be sure? The definite article ta is accusative singular neuter as well.
Okay, that article also can be, what was the other option here that I saw? Nominative. It can also be nominative singular.
Nominative, yeah.
So there's one other cue that tells you that it's accusative and not nominative.
Well, the ending of hiron is also.
But you'd have, but you'd also have that. You also have that ending in the nominative. So remember the nominative and accusative.
Oh, right. So how do I know? Maybe because of the pros in front of it.
There it is, because it takes a preposition.
Right.
And nominatives do not. So that's
right. Makes sense to me that way too. As the process is there. Okay. Good. Well, there's a 50-50 choice. And to me, though, it makes sense to be accusative.
And I agree with that because we already have an autos. We already have a subject first. So there is another reason that we already have another subject for the verb.
Exactly.
Okay.
How is haughty is best translated in this sentence? And I stated because. On what do you base your translation? Said that would not make as much sense if you use that. So because to me makes more sense. So.
Okay.
Is "and" translated as in or by in this sentence? Or on what do you base your answer? And I put lock. It's in a lid case, so it shows locative. If it was intro by, I don't know, it wouldn't be as by means of the heart, or so could be. I mean, but it's I chose locative.
And so I just kind of
better English.
Yes, I agree. And I would also say kind of expanded explanation. It is also indicating where he has sin. So the heart is where. It's not how he has sin or the means he has sin. It's the location where he has a sin problem.
Right.
Very good.
Locative to me is location. So.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
And I purposely didn't text you guys the other day because I know you asked. We're probably waiting for my text for that question. I didn't do it.
And obviously,
I know what he's talking about. We had that word that we were like, that word's not in here.
Oh, yeah.
The word.
For sure, Joe is going to tell us.
Yes.
Thanks
Well, guess what? I bought the lexical aids, and I was able to look it up there, and it helped out.
Good.
It's a good book.
And one other thing, if you didn't already make that correction in your textbook, there's two is's, one on either side of the hati in the English exercise. So yeah, get rid of that second one. Okay.
Which one? Where's that?
14B.
14B. I mean, the exercise, he just added, he reduplicated the is.
Oh, right.
You think she could translate which one?
16.
Okay, so we'll give you 15 then. No, she said you can do
It's true.
16.
You
Yeah.
could.
So we'll have Robin take
You can even
15.
Well, they're both 16. They'll turn 17 next year.
Okay, 15. Ekainos genoskai irene kaikaran kutas de genoskai hamartian hati uk akuai ten epangelian tu theu. This is a mouthful of words. Okay. That one, he knows peace and joy. But this one, roughly, when I wrote this in there, this one, but he knows sin that not he hears the promise of God. So, but because this one knows sin, he does not hear the promise of God. Did I throw that because in there? No, that's the hockey.
The because should be after that. But this
So,
one knows sin
This one knows
be-
sin
because he does not
because he does
not hear.
I'll roll with that. I didn't think that made sense. It's all through the-
I have a, you said promise of God, right? That would
Yeah.
be in the ablative, well, in the genitive. It could be ablative too, right? Promises from God.
It could be a promise from God, yes. In fact, personally, when I taught on promises, which I did for about a year, that's kind of the way I translate it most of the time.
Right.
It's a promise that comes from God. So
Versus a promise that belongs to God.
exactly.
Okay.
Because
That's how I translate it. It's
God
from.
need those promises. We're the ones that need them. So
But he's the one that makes them.
that's right. So that's why they're from him.
What is ekainos and hutas in respectively? What use is ekainos and hutas in respectively, and how should these words be translated? I mean, it says respectively, but they're both used the same way, right? As a
I would say so.
substantive.
Yes.
And so ekainos is that one, and hutas is this one. How does uk affect akuai? And it makes it negative, so it makes it does not hear versus hears. Locate theu. Part of speech is noun. I said the case was genitive, but y'all made a good argument for ablative. Singular and number, masculine gender. The lexical form is theos. And it's a second declension. Its function in the sentence is to modify a pangalia.
Okay.
Is there another way we would say what its function in the sentence is?
See, I wrote down and modifies pangalia, but technically that would be the function of the genitive. So I gave that same answer. But I'm wondering, can we say that it modifies a pangalia by indicating its source, which is what the ablative would be doing. So I think,
source.
yeah,
Say that again. Modifies by what?
it modifies a pangalia by telling us the source of the promise. So this is, you take the next level Greek, you learn it not just as an ablative, but you interpret it as an ablative of source.
Ablative of source. I like that.
There's ablative of separation, ablative of source. There's a number of different ways of handling it.
Okay.
Okay. Peggy,
You got this, Peg.
you got this one.
Yes, you do.
So I have a question on Christos. What's that next word?
It's supposed to be kephale,
Yeah.
and they got the
Kephale.
wrong letter there.
Oh, okay.
Good job.
Christos kephale tes ecclesias. Okay, the Christ. The head of the church.
Okay. Now you said the Christ
Is the head of the
is the
church.
head. So
Okay.
it's so it as a sentence, this is what we call a
Predicate position.
the verbless sentence.
Verbless.
There's no-
Okay.
There's no There's no written verb.
Also, it's, the Christ is head,
Is head.
right?
Yes.
It's not
Head.
the-
Right, is head.
Yeah, the church doesn't have different heads. It has head, so we don't say is a head.
Just wait, I'm looking at something.
You're doing great.
Stupid question. Wait, am I answering more questions here?
Sure.
What is the verb in the sentence? Is, on what do you base your answer? I don't know.
Okay,
So we have a predicate nominative, right?
yes.
So the verb is implied
Mm-hmm.
because we're equating Christ and head.
Correct.
Verb is. Right.
That's right. So I'm going to turn this way so you can hear them better.
Yeah, I heard it. She was,
Okay,
Robin's right. Predicate position of the noun kephale or kephale.
Good.
So what is the function of?
They did it
Say
again.
again.
I just didn't even notice that last night.
Kephale in the
I
sentence.
just read it that way.
Well, I
even
kept
notice
looking like,
it.
I don't know what the word is. I know what it should be. What is the function of kephale in this sentence? I read it, you have to answer it.
Oh. Well, I wasn't sure what exactly they were looking for, but it shows equality to the subject. So it's not a direct object, but it's a complement, a predicate complement.
Exactly.
Um,
And what is the significance of that function?
well, it serves as the, I don't know. It complements the subject.
It further explains who the subject is. Yeah.
Yeah, I put it asserts in this specifically. It asserts that Christ is the head.
Sure. Okay. Number C.
Why is the ending of ecclesias different from its definite article?
You know this one. We spent a lot of time on this in class. You know this one.
Yeah, I don't remember it. No, sorry.
So
Has to do with the letter that the root or the stem of the word ends in.
Iota.
It does. It ends in an iota. So we have an alpha rather than eta. Good.
see, you knew.
Okay, number
You did.
17. I'll go ahead and read one. Hasoi gar ex ergon, sorry, threw an M in there somehow or another. Namu isin hupo kataran isin. And it'd be as many as for out of works of law they are, under curse they are, or proper English, for as many as are out of the works of law, they are under a curse.
So you added those in there.
You added the there on the works. I just left of works of law.
No, I did not. I just said as many as, I actually don't have it in my writing. I just read it that way. For as many as are out of works of law, they are under a curse. And I did add for curse, just for clarification, but. Okay, so let's look at hasoi. What case is it? Any questions on the translation of the sentence, other than the fact that I threw a the in? I didn't mean to.
No.
No.
I had a really hard time with this one because when I read hasoi, I actually read hadoi. And so then I'm thinking, okay, ways. I was really trying to make the word ways work in there somehow, and I couldn't come up with it. So I'm glad we got to this. I found it before.
Is that considered a hasoi? Is that considered a pronoun or a adjective? I mean, what would that fall under?
It's an indefinite relative pronoun, which is why we say
Relative
for as many as are. So it's kind of like a comparative, as many as are,
Relative pronoun. Right. Okay.
not a comparative. And just for one of the things that's important about this verse, when I put a the in there accidentally when I was reading it in front of law, that actually you are compounding a problem that exists in Christendom, because he is not saying if you're under works of the Mosaic law, just if you're under works of law, whatever that law might be.
Right.
And I don't want to digress too much here, but for the sake of all of us, since I'm not just teaching Greek to people, but to believers, I'm reading a book right now by Andy Stanley, and he's talking about the problem in evangelicalism of creating a hybrid where we mix, well, they can't see me anyway, because this is all they're seeing is a screen, where we mix the old covenant and the new covenant. So we're mixing law in Christ's way of life. And so as a result, it's not just the Mosaic law, but it's law in general. And so and he keeps pointing that out, how we do that in evangelicalism, how we mix law all the time into our stuff. And by leaving the definite article off, Paul's able to say, if you're out of works of law, whatever law might be the Mosaic law, it could be a law that you created, it could be a hybrid law that you come up with.
So I have a question about this. It's not a Greek question.
Oh.
Should we wait? We can wait.
Okay, so let's put a pin on that.
So you're saying, like you're saying, it's best to say the works of law then, rather than.
Exactly. In fact, when you get over to chapter 5, he says, if you're led by the Spirit, you're not under law. He doesn't say you're not under the law. You're just not under law. There's no law. You don't need law if you're being led by the Spirit, because the Spirit's never going to lead you to go, oh, go kill that guy. The Spirit doesn't do that. Right. The Spirit's going to lead you to express love and joy and peace. So what do you need law for? Okay, so let's go down to locate hasoi. Hasoi. First of all, it is a case.
Nominative.
Number is
plural.
Gender is
masculine.
Part of speech.
Relative pronoun.
Yes. Excuse me. What's its function in the sentence?
Subject.
It is. And the lexical form would be?
Hasas.
Hasas.
Not hadas. So everyone knows.
Oh, hadas. I didn't hear you say it the first time. Now I understand. Way. I was kind of way. What word? I couldn't figure out what word you. Hadas. Okay.
Hadas, yeah.
Way or road. Okay. Okay. B. Why is X spelled X in this sentence?
Because it's before words starting with a vowel.
Very good. Okay, Joe, back to you. Number 18.
Okay. Ballet, ta, imation, autu, epi, tu, litho. So he throws, or he is throwing, the clothing, or in this case, his clothing, on the stone?
Yes.
So he is throwing his clothing on the stone.
Yeah. Or his garment.
Or his garment.
Yeah.
It could have been over the stone also, right?
It could have been over the stone, yeah.
But why?
Why is any of it happening anyway?
Well, sometimes you could throw your clothing over a stone, a big stone, so it can dry. I don't know. That's what I was thinking about, over or on or whatever. Or he threw it over a stone that he wanted to hide.
Oh, there you go. Could be a smaller stone.
Right. So what is the subject of ballet? Ballet? He? Ballet?
Okay.
Ballet? He?
He, yes.
Second person singular verb ending.
No.
So-
Third person.
Or third person, I'm sorry, third person. Yeah, I can't read what am I writing. Third person, singular verb ending. Could be she or she also, right?
It could be, because
It's
we
not
don't,
specified, right?
because we have no
So
context
if
to
we're being
tell it.
super politically correct and gender neutral and stuff, we would have said that this one Rose.
You could
They're
do,
close.
you could do that, yeah.
But it's not near demonstrative,
Well, not expressed, yeah,
right?
yeah, precisely.
Didn't have, right? So it's either he or she. What is the function of emation in the sentence? I said it's a direct object of the action. What's the significance? It's what's the significance of that? It's that's where the limitation of what he's doing, right?
That's right. So it's not just that he's throwing anything, he's specifically throwing his garment.
In what case is litho put genitive? On what do you base your answer? Second declensive, genitive, singular, masculine ending.
Okay. And you could also go back and you could see that it's the genitive case that that epi functions with to indicate kind of place. Difference between this and location in the locative. Locative is specific place. Genitive is kind of place. So it's like when the genitive occurs, you can have time or you can have night in the locative, meaning in the night. But when night occurs in the genitive, it's like it was night kind of time, and which is actually more common in Greek than night as a locative, interestingly enough.
Okay.
So, because they looked at it not so much as a time, location, or time. What?
Okay.
Well, I'm just saying lithu can function as the kind of place. Okay.
I'm just stuck on what's the difference between the night and the night time. Yeah. What?
I think a lot of it has to do with the way different cultures,
Darkness.
different
how they
cultures
thought.
think about different
Gotcha,
things.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. Okay. So we're gonna Robin take 19.
Okay. Yeah, Haute?
Is that a breathing mark?
It is a breathing mark, but should it be Haute?
I'm gonna go look. I'm gonna compare it to.
Estin Heagape,
Yeah, it is a breeding mark.
but is it supposed to be?
Yes,
All right.
I see it as.
Kina, Peripotamen, Katatas, and Talas Autu. So did I translate the word wrong? Haute?
No.
What is Haute?
I didn't even notice that it said Haute.
Move on to advanced friends.
We'd had our lights on our timers at our house, and my light clicked off, and so I was doing this in very dim light. I was too lazy to undo the timer and turn the light back on.
Okay.
This.
Yeah, so
Okay, so we go
and
back.
this is love that we might walk according to the commandments of him. Or his commandments. But I'm so confused about why
Okay.
there's a rough breathing mark.
It's because we're distinguishing,
page?
remember, look in chapter 10,
What page?
very first page,
Page.
45.
Okay.
And we're looking under the paradigm for hutas.
Oh, for hutas.
So we have hutas.
Oh, so that word is hutas, not autos.
Yeah.
Aww.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's same thing we have haute, they're doing the
Right
same
there.
thing to distinguish that.
So,
Oh, man. Okay. See, I got all confused there too. I wanted it to be she, and she is love? What?
But that,
right there. Oops, sorry, or
so that affects how we translate it, obviously.
so.
So hutas is a near demonstrative, so we translate it,
This.
okay,
This is love,
there we go.
that we might walk according to the commandments of him. This commandment.
There we go.
Why must the verb of being be present in the phrase haute estin he agape? So funny, because then I was like, 10.3b, this is about a totally different word. Why are they sending me there? But it's not.
Okay.
Because it is in the predicate position. Yeah, I don't know why it's necessary that it's there. There's nowhere.
I took a guess on this word again. I thought, well, the predicate nominative complement of agape needs a subject to complete. Typically, you locate a subject with a
Say it again.
an article. Typically, you would locate a subject. Well, since agape is the complement, nominative, predicate, nominative complement, it needs a and the verb estin is there. You need a complement, which is agape fulfills, and so you're trying to locate typically to locate a subject, you're looking for an article in a nominative, and there's no article there. So I think because there's no article, you need to have estin. That's my guess.
Yeah, it's what you're doing by putting estin in there, you are helping yourself understand. You have a whole sentence that it says this is love. Otherwise, you would be inclined, you should translate it, the love is this, which you could write the sentence that way. You could write the sentence, the love is this, and then go on and explain what it is. But this is under 10.3b, this is when we're talking about this construction, the noun as the article and the demonstrative pronoun is not standing in the predicate position, not the attributive position. So it's actually standing in the predicate position, but we don't translate it in the predicate position. We translate it that this is love. And so this is a place where the presence of.
Okay, hold tight. Because if I see, I'm understanding now. If estin was not there, it would say, we would translate it this love, not this is love.
There we go. There we go. There we go. So.
Thus, hutas ha anthropos does not mean this is the person, but is translated this person.
There
So
you
we
go.
have to have estin so that we know that this is
Yeah.
the love.
Because he's going to go on and explain an aspect of what love is. Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Good.
That was A.
Yeah.
Oh, B. Now we just get to read a bunch of information. Note, hiva, or hina, sorry, is a subordinating conjunction that introduces a dependent clause. We'll learn that in chapter 13 and chapter 24.
What that simply means is the last phrase, this last clause, we might walk according to his command, is dependent on the first clause to make sense. If you had it by itself, it's not a sentence that, it needs other information.
Right. Dissect and parse peripatulmen. Well, it is a verb in the present tense, active voice, subjunctive mood. Does not have an augment.
And the subjunctive mood is why they translate it, we might walk. Or I would even maybe translate it, we should walk. We could translate it both ways to be subjunctive. Keep going.
Okay. No augment. First person, plural number. Peripateo is the lexical form. The stem is peripat. The ending is men. The connecting vowel is O. So the ending is not omen. Subject, first plural. That's how I would have written it.
Alright.
When it says ending, I would have put omen. And then the connecting vowel being O.
And that's because normally it's amen, but that's one of the things that indicates that we've gone to a subjunctive tense, is that they've lengthened that vowel from a short O class to a long O class. Okay, any other questions on 19? Hey, Peggy.
Ugar este hupa naman Allah hupa karin. I don't know.
Joseph?
I put the oo there is not,
Okay,
or being a postpositive, so before you or for you are not under law, but under grace.
by the way, another example of the fact that definite article is with neither one of those words, if neither with law or grace. So,
But when we read it in our English Bibles, it often says under the law.
I don't think it does. I
No.
think most of our English Bibles just say for you are under law, not under law, but under grace. I think they do get this one place, they do translate it well, usually. Okay, why is the negative particle spelled oo rather than ook?
Yeah.
It precedes
Consonant.
precedes a word, begins with a consonant. Very good. Why is gar the second word of the clause, yet it is translated as the first word of the clause?
What?
Why is gar the first word of the clause, yet it is translated? Oh, I keep saying first, don't I? Why is gar
Wait.
the second word
Wait,
of the
you
clause?
didn't get this one. What is the significance of the placement of ooh in this sentence?
Emphasis.
Emphasis.
Oh, yes.
Emphasis. Emphasis. Yes. No.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, emphasis.
Okay. Now B.
Okay, I'm sorry. So why is gar the second word of the clause, yet it is translated as the first word of the clause?
English grammar.
It's a post-positive.
Positive.
There's a post-positive. And why Greek developed a word that for us, we always say second, but for them, they always wrote at least, we always
One word.
pronounce it first or write it first, translate it first. Oh, man.
You're doing great.
I'm not for sure. Okay, so then we have Karin. It's a noun. It's accusative case. It's singular. It's the object of hupo, the object of the preposition. Its gender is feminine. The lexical form is charis. And its declension is third.
The object of hupa. Say
Hupa.
Right.
Okay.
Now he's gonna.
I
tell
don't
us
get a
nobody
whole lot
actually
right
says it
in this,
that
but
way.
I can
Oh.
say it.
Okay.
I can pronounce these letters.
Yes.
Dang it.
So anyway, yeah, they're introducing you to some other vocabulary forms we haven't seen there with Corinne. The word charis. In fact, we had some friends that just left for Papua New Guinea a little over a week ago. And that's what their daughter's name is, Charis. Charis. Okay, so because we got started a little late and we've got time, you have a question?
You can go back to number 17 there.
Oh, there was a question
I
on
was thinking
17.
After
class,
Okay,
gotcha,
Yeah,
okay.
it's not a
Okay.
Greek question.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go over, we're going to go to, I was not keeping up, and I had that and I didn't keep up on it. Sorry for people following along online there that I
We're not.
wasn't keeping up on this. Okay, so our vocabulary. We're going to start vocabulary in lesson 11. So
We're getting into some new things now.
okay, this lesson is going to be present, middle, and passive indicative. So all we've had so far is present active indicative, but we're not going to worry about that today. Other than just to tell you what a middle and passive is, but we're going to go through our vocabulary. So Joe, if you want to read the first one there.
Sure. Apokrinomai.
What?
Apokrinomai. Apokrinomai.
Okay. Apokrinomai.
Apokrinomai.
I answer. Dative case.
Yeah. And it's based off the base word krino, I judge, and then apo. So from a judgment, I make a judgment and I reply. The word occurs a lot in the Gospel of John. When people speak to Jesus, this word oftentimes and Jesus replied. That's the way I translate it when I went through John a few years ago. I was surprised how often this occurred. Anyway, I answer or I reply.
So what is the D after?
The D is a deponent, which we will talk about.
Okay,
No.
and it says dative case there after I answer, so that's referring to,
It takes a dative case, yes.
so it's a verb that takes a dative.
So in
case.
other words, I answer and then I answer to you. So doesn't that make sense? I
Okay.
reply to you. It's dative in interest of something that you've brought up.
Why do they call it a defective verb? I'm looking at the note down below.
Oh, when they're talking about these, a deponent? Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit. We're going to hold off on that for a minute and we're just going to go through our vocabulary. So, okay, Peggy.
Is that a rough or smooth?
Smooth.
Okay. Arco. I rule. Archomai. Middle voice. I begin.
I begin.
Follow. I throw.
Which you get the word ball from that. So that maybe makes that one easier.
Very cool.
Ginomai, I become.
Dekomai. I receive.
And that's, I receive it the sense of I welcome it. So welcome is, I like to use that when I'm,
Welcome.
to add a little bit more flavor to the term.
Decomai. We have another word for I receive. What is that?
Lambano,
Yeah.
lambano, I take or receive, yes.
So there's a difference because it's gonna be, I mean, they have different meanings.
Yeah, because decomai has a little bit more depth in terms of what?
Like a lambano, you take.
Oh, yeah, I can take a thing in lambano or I receive it because somebody hands it to me, I take it. But decomai really is laying emphasis on being welcomed. So there are aspects of,
Okay.
It's an attitude.
in John 1, it says Jesus came to his own things, that is to its creation, it's a neuter, but his own people, switches over to a masculine then, his own people did not welcome him. So he wasn't welcomed by the people. His things obeyed him, but the people did not welcome him.
Okay.
Okay,
Eremos. Okay, Eremos. Desert.
Okay.
Desolate.
oh, I guess I can do this. Erkamai, and this is a place where Joe has Metzger's lexical aids, and they're showing you all the versions of Erkamai that you can have if you learn this. Erkamai is I come or I go. Okay, Erkamai, I come or I go. Op Erkamai, because the op preposition is away from, so I go away. Dia, because dia is through. Dia Erkamai, I go through. Iserkamai, I go into or I enter. Exerkamai, I go out. Proserkamai is I come, the idea of I coming like I'm approaching you. Okay, so pros.
Toward, right?
And sunerkamai, I come with or I come together.
We didn't
Which
hear
is-
you, Joe.
I said it's sort of like coming like toward.
Yes, yes. So that's one of those where, and that doesn't happen with every word when they add prepositions on the beginning, but this is one of the ones that demonstrates sometimes that if you know your prepositions, prefix them to the front of these words and it expands your vocabulary real fast. Okay, if you get the base word. Okay, Joe, next one.
Okay. Cardia. A, cardia, heart.
Heart. And
We
so,
haven't had that.
well, we've had it in some of our exercises, but they taught it, they just introduced it to us ahead of time. And that one, again, I think probably goes without saying, but if you go into the cardiac unit, it's because you're there for a heart issue. Peggy.
Okay, Russo. I proclaim, I preach.
Is that herald also?
Yeah, the herald, yeah.
Uranas, heaven. Uranas.
Peruamai. I go, I travel, I take a trip.
Okay, well, so
So it's
Aruma is not,
Epsilon. Epsilon, right? That's U,
Peruamai.
or do we
ooh.
pronounce all
Par-
our at Uamai?
no, it's, if it was the other one, it would
You, like you're
That's
talking
a
about like
weird
feud
thing.
with the, you're talking about the umlaut.
Yeah,
over it,
whatever. Yeah.
They would pronounce it
Set 'em apart,
separately.
Yeah,
So Perumai, Perumai,
so you're saying you.
like you, like in
Like,
You have
feud.
to have that.
You. Okay.
Perumai,
Uamai.
I go, I travel, I take a trip.
So that's different from Arkamai.
Different than op erkamai, I go away.
So
Yeah.
I go.
It's just I go, yeah. So a lot of times when you have Perumai, not always, but it has the idea that there's like a journey involved in it. Whereas
Okay.
erkamai, simply you're just going. Okay, Joe.
Okay, sosa. So,
So
I say.
I say, and that can be physically, it can be spiritually. Peggy,
Hey, phone, voice.
voice, which again, understand something about phonetics. Phonograph, you're talking about sound, voice like that. So phone, you're talking about a voice. Okay, now, any question on the vocabulary?
No.
Okay, so let's just talk for a moment before we actually go through and look. We're not going to look at the middle and passive forms. We're going to save those for Thursday. But let's talk a little bit about what a middle and a passive are. Now, I think passives we understand. But if we look on page 50, we can see we're just looking at the translation. I'm not looking at the forms right now. When we're talking about the middle and passive. What? Oh, yeah, let me pull it up. I haven't been keeping up with it. So looking at my book. Let's see. Let's go down here to. Okay, so right here in our chart, first chart on page 50, we're just going to look at the first one, luamai. We've already learned luo is I loose. But when it's in the middle voice, we could say I am loosing myself. Now that's not the full extent of it. It could be I personally am loosing. There's a personal interest in it, or I'm freeing myself. You're tied up and you're undoing your own rope or something like that. That'd be the middle voice, something you're doing for yourself. English does not have a middle voice.
Could it be I am freeing myself?
It could be, well, yeah, but luo means to loose or to destroy various ways. So I'm loosing myself. But when we switch down to the next chart and we have let me decrease the size here a little bit.
And it's also passive. Luamai is passive.
And then we go down to luamai in the second chart, we're looking at the passive translations. It's the same form. That's the whole thing. Luamai is the same form in the present for both the middle and the passive. Some forms, when we get into different tenses, they will have two distinct forms. So you're going to have to read these. And let's put it this way. Once you become familiar with this, when you read it, it's like the middle makes more sense or the passive makes more sense. Oftentimes it's a little bit more obvious. But the passive we get, I'm being loose. Somebody else comes in and is cutting my bindings in that case. So that's what we're talking. And so I think we all get it with the passive. I always, okay. The picture I always use at church is I use like the word ballo. I throw, so I can go out in the backyard. So we go up to friends in our church have a swimming pool. And I could say, I throw into the pool. I throw into the pool. So I could pick my wife up and I could throw her into the pool. Okay. If we switched it to the middle voice, it's like I throw myself into the pool. We call that jumping or diving, right? But that you could use it that way. That would be a middle voice. Passively, my wife picks me up and throws me into the pool or pushes me, I guess. That would be passive. I am thrown into the pool. See, I am thrown into the pool. So throw, active, throw for myself or throw myself, middle, and passive, then I am thrown.
So active is I'm doing it to something else. Passive is it being done to me, and middle is I'm doing it to myself.
I'm doing it to myself, or I'm doing it with a personal interest of some way.
To myself or for myself.
Yeah, it could be either way. It depends on the context, which one makes more sense. So now, Joe asked the question about the deponent or the defective, why we have defectives or deponents here. And we have some of these words that, and what some Greek scholars over the years have thought is that, like that first vocabulary word that we had, apokrinomai and ginomai, never has an active voice. It never occurs in an active form. You only find it in middle and passive. And so they said, oh, the active disappeared and the middle or passive took over for the active voice. The problem with that is all these words that always are called deponent, they're words that whenever they occur, there's always a personal interest involved. So the nature of the verb by itself is that it is middle. I mean, when we look at all the erchomais, I go away, I go through, I go into, and so on and so forth. It's always I'm traveling or he's traveling. It's always a person is doing this with their own personal interest. So it's you just don't have an active sense outside of a middle. Just doesn't ever make sense. And there are modern Greek scholars. Our text is old-fashioned a little bit in this way, in that they still call it deponent. And there are still some that do that, but there's a case being made by modern Greek, New Testament Greek scholars that are saying we should quit calling these deponents because we have no actives, because an active doesn't make sense. It always is middle or passive. It's just the nature of the verb. It's the nature of what's going on in there. Ginomai. How do I become without it being something of personal interest? How do you have it active? I actively become. It just doesn't make sense. I have a personal interest in becoming. Something it's personally involving.
I don't feel like I'm understanding what you're saying.
Okay. We can get the idea with ballo. I can be thrown, but if I throw a ball, I may have no interest. I'm just throwing it because that's what I'm supposed to do. Okay. So we can have an active sense for ballo. Okay. But becoming, ginomai, if I become, there's a personal interest that I'm personally engaged. I'm really a part of what that is, because it's something that personally is involved. Same thing with I go, that it's not to say actively that I'm going is, well, I'm still doing it. So it's a personal thing that I'm personally involved in, because I'm actually the one that's traveling in there. It's not that the ball is traveling through the air. It's I'm doing the traveling.
You're saying I go is I am making myself go.
Yeah, essentially is what's happening. Yeah. Whereas with ballo, I don't have a personal interest in that ball. That ball is not me. It's not directly part of me. I'm just throwing that ball. Anyway, so this is what they say. So when I took Greek, I don't know, 35, 40 years ago, whenever that was, not that long ago, almost 40 years ago now. I took it when I was 18. Back then they were still teaching deponents, and in the time since they're really saying No, these words never had an active sense because there was always a personal interest involved in the nature of the verb. When I reply, that's because the very nature of that first word, apokrynomai, I answer, I've actually made a judgment. That's the idea of that base of, I'm personally making a judgment and I am personally responding. So I don't respond you, I respond to you in that sense. That's why we have a dative. So apokrynomai is there. I have a personal interest in what I'm doing there. Anyway, so. Anyway, I'm just trying to explain. They translated as a deponent, and even when I went through seminary, we were like, these deponents don't seem to really represent well what's happening when we translated that. It's kind of a.
Well, so, okay, so if we're looking at, let's just look at apokrynomai and valo.
Okay.
So I could say apokrynomai, and that's a sentence.
Right. I respond.
And
Yeah.
you don't need anything else. You might wonder some things, but you don't need anything else for it to be a sentence. But if I say follow, I throw, you're going to wonder what.
You're wondering what you're throwing. That's right.
Because but I could say follow mine, and now I've changed it to middle voice.
Right.
And so now I'm saying I throw myself.
Right.
Is that what that means? If I say follow mine?
Or you could translate passive,
Or
I am
passive,
being
which
thrown.
would be
Yeah.
I am being thrown.
Right.
You would need context to know the difference.
Right. But we have no apokryno. We have no active form. We have no active form occurs for apokrynomai. We have no active form for decomai.
I feel like
We
we're
don't-
trying too hard to make it make sense.
So, and we just don't have to. All I'm telling you is they're going to teach you that these are deponents. Don't worry about it.
The word
that's-
doesn't matter.
It doesn't, that word deponent,
It
just
means
don't
there's no
worry
active
about that.
form of this verb.
Just learn what we're learning here, middle and passive, just learn that and handle that. And if people come along and say it's a deponent and you don't even have to argue with them, just tell them, nah, just don't worry about it.
Okay.
Just roll with it.
So like decomai is I receive, right? So is it kind of like I receive myself, but you don't have to state the myself?
Well, the very nature of receiving a thing means somebody's handing you and you're going, hey, you take it.
Would myself be like in parentheses or no? Just like, because I'm looking at the intensive middle. Or no. I'm looking at the indirect middle.
decomai, the fifth word in our list.
It's a reference to itself, right?
Okay, you're looking at,
I'm looking at 11.4b.
In the book?
Yeah,
like
indirect middle.
Here,
I just have a habit of reading certain,
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
specifically it's an indirect middle, right?
It's exactly what we're talking. That's an exactly good illustration of decomai. I'm receiving it, and it's a difference between lambano. Lambano means I take or receive, but there's less of a personal interest in it. Now, lambano can occur in a middle voice, but lambano also can occur in regular active
in
voice.
their example, they're using lambano Dora. She is taking gifts for herself.
Right. See, so you can put it. So if you put it in the middle voice, now you're giving a middle force to it.
Or you're
Lambanamai.
because decamai is different. Okay.
Anyway.
Right.
Big thing. So if the whole deponent thing is I'm answering that question. Why do we have deponent or defective verb? Just don't worry about it. Okay, it's basically what we're saying. The big thing to remember is what is a middle and what is a passive. Middle means in some way that I have a personal interest. I'm either doing it to myself or I'm doing it for myself in some way. And passive, it's being done to me. Okay. So that's those.
So basically, may I state this, that the only way you would really know what, because it looks like they have the same endings, right? So the only way you'd know is just what it is by what's being stated in the sentence or the context, perhaps.
Exactly. You have to determine from context whether you're going to give a middle force to it or pass it.
So I could see where a lot of translation could be in error because it's not looking at context.
Right. Like
All
I
right.
said, there are forms of the word, other forms of the word in other tenses in which you don't have that, in which the ending, the middle ending is different than the passive ending in that regard. There's a really interesting one in Romans 9 like that I think if translators brought off the force of it, you'd really see the difference between a believer and an unbeliever in that context, because the believer is one that the Lord has prepared. He's prepared them for his glory. Whereas the unbeliever, it says they have actually prepared themselves for ruination. In other words, God didn't make them. God didn't make them to become ruin. They did that to themselves. It's a middle voice. So, which, by the way, then it disagrees with, I'm not here to teach theology, but it disagrees with Calvinism, because Calvinism, even though I hold the things that people would say, oh, you're a Calvinist. I've had people tell me that. I'm like, no, because there's things that the Bible disagrees with on that system. I just try to stick with what the Bible says, but it disagrees with Calvinism because Calvinism thinks that God, at least big forms of Calvinism, believes that God made some people for glory and he made some people to go to hell eternally. He made that determination way back in the past. That's what Calvinism teach. And that verse would say, no, those people did that to themselves. So, okay, I'm going to end the YouTube. Anyway.